This week, you're going to be working on rewriting the recipes from the book. And the purpose of this assignment is for you to explore all of the possibilities of the recipes. You're going to obviously start with the recipe from the book, but then add information to it, modify it, customize it, and make it yours. And that information you could collect from demos that I've posted, videos, articles, any other materials that I've posted. You might have personal information either from yourself or from someone else. Or maybe you just decide to do additional research. And you're going to put all that information into the recipes. Now, ultimately, you're going to get into the kitchen one day and you're going to cook one of these dishes. And when you do that, you're going to collect all of that information, feedback from, chef instructor, other students, maybe, your personal thoughts on the dish, and then maybe what you would like the dish to become in the future. That way, you're starting with a base recipe, which, is usually kind of basic, and you're growing and you're building upon it until it becomes something that's uniquely yours. Now, when you're in the classroom and you are working in different teams and different students are making different things, you also need to collect information about those recipes that maybe you didn't make, things that you observed, things that you saw. You're trying to document and record all of your experiences so that you can keep them. Now, where do you keep them? Old school chefs would put all of that information into a notebook. But those are prone to, you can lose them, they can burn, uh, all kinds of things can happen to them. And I've certainly heard plenty of nightmare stories from, you know, chefs that I know who like left their notebook on top of their car or whatever. So, these days we have lots of modern technology that can help us with that. There's no reason why you should lose a recipe. Put it in Google Docs or Dropbox and make sure that you never lose it again. I keep all of my recipes in Google Drive, and I've got them on my laptop. I can access them from any computer that I sit down at, and I've got them access to it from my cell phone. So that's really ideal. As you grow in this career, you want that repertoire of recipes to continue to grow and grow and grow just as you do. So this week we're looking at some different regions of Mexico. We've got, a lot of recipes. The first one is sopa de lima con pollo y elote. It's, just a basic variation of chicken soup. This one's got corn and lime in it. You'll see lots of different variations on this if you look around the web. Or if you have some other books that you can use as a reference. This one in particular, is garnished with tortillas. You might look at that and think, is that tortilla soup? Tortillas are a common garnish. Obviously, these are cut into strips, like juliennes and fried. Arroz blanco con verduras. A lot of times, if you've been to Mexican restaurants, you've probably seen the Spanish rice, which is usually has kind of like a pink color to it. So, has some kind of tomato product, tomato juice, fresh tomatoes, or tomato paste. This one is blanco, white. So it doesn't have that tomato product in there tinting the color. So the purpose of this dish is supposed to be white with a rainbow of vegetables in it. Does it have to be these vegetables? No, you can change it. And I know we looked at moles earlier in the term when we were just studying the regions of Mexico in general, but this is a really nice one. You've got a wide variety of herbs in here, some unique things that maybe you haven't seen before. If you have access to a farmer's market, you might pop by and see if you can find all of the herbs that go into this dish and at least touch them and smell them. It's really fantastic. But you can see a typical example of some of the green things that go into making this sauce. It's wonderful. Does it have to have meat in it? Can you change the meat? Absolutely. If you were going to change something about this recipe, what would you change? Frijoles de olla. Very basic dish. You're going to cook some beans and garnish them. What kind of beans would you like to use? I know we talked about tortillas earlier in the term. I mentioned Chef Sedlar's tortillas from Los Angeles. Those are the ones on the right of your screen, where he put herbs and flowers into them. And basically, um, if you watch my demo on tortillas, at the end, after you've pressed the tortillas and you open the press and peel back the top layer of plastic, this is the time when you would put something on top of the tortilla, and then you just close the press again and press it gently, just to adhere whatever that item is that you're trying to put into it. Now, the tortillas on the left, they've taken the tortilla recipe to another level. And that's really what this exploration of all of these recipes is about. It's not just about making the basic recipe out of the book, but customizing it and taking it to the next level. So what they've done here is they've mixed other items into the tortilla dough. So much like you would maybe color and or flavor a pasta, maybe you take that water that you're going to put into the masa to turn it into tortillas, and you put saffron into it, and you get this red color, or you mix paprika in with the flour, or you grind up some herbs with the flour, or blend the herbs in with the water. Lots of different ways to incorporate different colors and flavors into the doughs. This is flan, orange flavored, flan de naranja. And it looks to me like in the picture, like they garnished it with a raw orange zest. I would not suggest that. If you're going to use orange zest on a dessert, I would candy it first, so maybe just put it in cold water, bring it up to a boil, and drain off the water. Then make a simple syrup and cook it for maybe like 5-10 minutes in the simple syrup until it starts to go from kind of like that opaque color to a little bit more translucent. And of course, try it. Just put it in your mouth, taste it, make sure it's tasty, has a nice texture. Now, as far as the flan, this one looks a little bit overdone to me. You can see the bubbles on the exterior surface going all the way around, and then the texture inside is not silky smooth. It's kind of like chunky. So when you're cooking the flan, much like all the other custards, you want it to be just a little bit underdone when you pull it out of the oven. So basically, give it a shake. You want to see something like about the size of a nickel of still raw, loose liquid right in the center. And by the time you get it out of the oven, take it out of the water bath and set it aside to cool. What's going to happen is you're going to get a little bit of carryover cooking, and that last little bit of raw batter is going to cook. And that's ideal texture for custards. I mean, you don't want them to be runny. You do want them to set up and gel, but you don't want them to be lumpy. The bubbles on the exterior surface here are from the custard on the exterior boiling, and it probably boiled a little bit on the inside. And if you do that for too long, custards tend to break. This is sopa de ajo, very basic, just so it's kind of like a egg drop soup, but Mexican, Spanish style. Nopales in chipotle adobado. It's just cactus in a sauce, very basic. Now this one, pavo con salsa de achiote a la yucat. I'm tongue-tied. Yucateneca, a la yucateca. This dish is, in the picture it's a chicken, but this can be done with turkey, it can be done with pork. And basically, you're creating this flavorful sauce, wrapping it around the meat, and cooking it slowly so that it's nice and tender. A lot of times, people will wrap it in banana leaves and um, you know, steam it or roast it until it's very tender. And then as far as the presentation of this dish, you could serve it roasted, shredded, um, with all of the accompaniments, or you can make it into a fancy taco. So all of the things that go along with this dish, feel free to explore, different presentations of it. Yes, and then the frijoles refritos, right? The refried beans. Here they're garnished with, like a fresh cheese, like queso fresco, queso cotija, some kind of like crumbly cheese, right over the top. You can take a dried chili, like chili japón, and just deep fry it lightly, for a few moments, just to crisp it up and give it a little bit of color. And of course, they garnished it with tortilla chips here. I posted a video about guacamole from this amazing chef from Manhattan. Uh, I've been to a couple of the different restaurants where he's worked at. He's a really, really talented guy. But he had this one interesting thing that he does with the guacamole that I thought, really made it stand out and shine. And that is that instead of mashing it all up like most people do, he pushes it through a resting rack, like a roasting rack or a glazing rack, and which basically creates a dice of the avocado really quick and easy. And that way, when you combine it with the rest of the ingredients, you see all of the color variations of guacamole rather than just this one note of green. And I thought that was a really neat way to prepare it. Salsa de jitomate is real basic variation on a charred and partially pureed salsa. Some of the salsas from Mexico are completely pureed. Some of them, everything's chopped up. Like in pico de gallo, which is it's almost more like a salad rather than a sauce. But this one's got kind of like a combination. So you've got some things are pureed and some things are diced. Um, oh, for some reason I have the wrong title here on this slide. Oops. But this is a rice pudding, um, and lovely dish, garnished with a little bit of cinnamon. There's a lot of use of cinnamon all throughout these recipes. Churros, it's a lot like making pâte à choux. If you've already been through baking and pastry, um, you know, pâte à choux is cabbage paste, what you use to make eclairs and cream puffs. This dough is a bit stiffer than that. Um, a lot of times, you need something really strong to squeeze these out of the bag. Um, I used to make these in one restaurant, and we actually used a sausage stuffer with a pastry tip attached to it, a star tip, because it comes out pretty stiff. But they're deep fried and served with a dipping sauce. Real thick chocolate sauce is pretty typical. Some variations, especially like the Spanish style churros, they get into like designer, really fancy ones, and they'll stuff them with like a ganache or a pastry cream or something like that. So this is a fun dish. It's really delicious. Just another way to have some fried dough, kind of like a donut. Mexican hot chocolate is a little bit different from hot chocolate that maybe you're more familiar with. It tends to be really, really thick compared to the American Western style. It's not loose and thin. And then pico de gallo is the rooster's beak. It's like everything's the size of chicken feed. You're dicing everything all up. A lot of people call this salsa. It's not. I mean, we use it like a sauce, but it's more of a salad, an accompaniment, a garnish. Something that you put on top of a dish.